have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, happy Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am Mandy Bryce. I am the host, and I am excited to share with you another awesome episode with an interview that I got to do with somebody who has made bold moves, hence the name, and is living a great life as a result. And I'm so excited to share it with you. This is Kendra Swalls. She used to be a teacher, which if you know me, you know that that is my background as well. And similar industry, she is now a photographer, but she bravely left her job and started fresh and is now still teaching just outside of the classroom. And I'm excited for you to hear how and why and where. So I'm going to let Kendra tell the story because it's her story and she's so much better at it. All right, without further ado, here is my interview with Kendra Swalls. All right, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. Today I am chatting with Kendra Swalls. Welcome to the show, Kendra.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. It's my pleasure. I know you're a fellow podcaster, so I'm sure this will be a smooth operation. But you know that my show is called Bold Moves, and you wouldn't be here if you hadn't taken some risks at some point in your life. So I would love it if you would share your story and some of the risks that you've taken with me and with our audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love to. It's definitely interesting being on the other side of the interview this time. So this will be fun.
I love it.
Yeah. So I started off my career actually as a teacher. So I went to college to be an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
And that was just the path I thought I was going to take. It seemed kind of like the safe path, I guess. There's always teaching jobs. I was a classroom teacher in elementary school for 13 years.
What grade or grades?
So I taught second grade and third grade, and then I ended the last few years as a math curriculum specialist.
Okay.
Because in that time of teaching, I went back and got my master's degree in curriculum, and I had a new dream of being like a curriculum director and like writing curriculum for schools.
Yes.
And
I also went to school for teaching and taught for 6 years. And that was one of my favorite parts was writing lesson plans and making units and stuff. Like my nerd self loves it.
Yeah.
We have a friend, a special guest.
So sorry.
Don't be.
Close the door.
She's cute.
You can have it. Go to your room and close the door. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's all good. What an adorable one. I love the pigtails. Hi.
Can you say hi? Hi. This is Sadie.
Hi, right. Sadie.
Go back to your room, okay? Love you.
Oh my goodness.
All right, close the door. I'm so sorry.
Don't be. So cute. Cutest part of my whole day, I'm sure.
Okay. You want me to start over or to keep going?
No, just keep going.
Okay. So I had this new direction. I was going to be a curriculum coordinator. And in that time that I was teaching, I decided I wanted a hobby. I was engaged and my fiance had all these hobbies that he had. He loved to hunt and fish and he had these like projects he'd work on his truck. And I was like, I just don't have anything that's like a hobby. I want a hobby. And so I started thinking about what are all the things that I enjoy doing for fun. Mm-hmm. And I've always loved taking pictures. Okay. And so I thought, okay, well, let me kind of jump into like photography. And I took a couple photography classes in college for fun, like as an elective. And so, but they were film photography. It was all about sort of the dark room and developing film. And so for Christmas one year, my fiance bought me a digital camera and I jumped into the world of photography. And at the time I was taking pictures of my dog and pretty much anything that would sit still for a while. And my best friend at the time, we were both teachers and we both were thinking, we love teaching, but we don't want to do this forever. It's exhausting.
Yes.
And she just had her first little boy. And so we had the idea of let's take his newborn photos. Like how hard can that be, right? And so we did that and we both were like, we really love this. Let's start a business. Cause you do that one time and you're like, sure, let's just start a business. It makes sense, right?
This. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So we started our photography business together and we're doing it on the side and, after hours teaching on the weekends, holidays, summers, that kind of stuff. And we learned really quickly we had different interests. So she loved little babies and the newborns. I did not. I wanted to work with adults, people who would follow direction, stand still when
Probably
I
not
asked them
pee on
to.
you.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So we decided to, just create two separate businesses. So she created hers, and then I went on with doing like couples and seniors, got into weddings. And I was doing this all alongside teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And it started getting to the point where it was getting bigger and bigger, and I was getting busier and busier. And I was having a really hard time finding time to do both my day job and the photography business.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, we also had our first daughter, and she was home with my in-laws for the first year and then in daycare. And it just broke my heart that I wasn't home with her. So by the time we got pregnant with our second one, I was like, I want this to be my full-time job. I want to not go back to teaching. And so 2 years ago, I put in my resignation. My daughter was 1 year old,
Mm-hmm.
my youngest one. And it's been amazing. It was really bittersweet because I enjoyed my teaching job. I loved the people that I worked with. And then to walk away from that was sad, but at the same time, I've loved every minute of being able to run my business on my own time and be a mom to my girls and everything like that comes with it.
That's amazing. And it's hilarious how much we have in common. I know I mentioned that I was a teacher as well. And in high school and college, I actually worked at a portrait studio. And similar to your experience of taking pictures of anything that would sit relatively still. Even though I was working as a photographer, often was she'll sit still. So I ended up getting in front of the camera a lot. And when I was looking to make a website, I had also learned on film. The studio I worked at the most was a medium format camera. And I was looking to make a website to put my work online. And so I was looking at other photography portfolios, and I only had digital pictures of myself. And long story short, I threw them on some site that was for models and photographers and so on, and ended up signing with Ford models and going to New York.
Wow.
And yeah, so mine went a little bit of a different direction, but had a very similar beginning. And now I'm a makeup artist way more than I'm a model, but there's so much of your story that resonated with me. And I also have to say that I absolutely love when I have people on here who quit jobs that they loved, because it's a bold move either way to quit your job and start your own business, for sure. Especially, I mean, even if you've done, I don't know at what point your business was, and you can share if you're willing to, when you quit your job, if it was sustaining your income, if it had matched it or exceeded it or had that potential to at that time or not. Either way, that's still a bold move, because you have to, of course, keep things going or grow. But it's always more fascinating to me when people are like, no, I didn't hate it. Because I feel like when you hate the job that you're quitting, the pain is enough to potentially push you towards something else. Whereas it's not necessarily running from pain, but running toward your passion or whatever desires go along with it, like being able to stay home with your kids. So I would love to hear more about that part.
Yeah. So people thought I was crazy for quitting the job I had, because it was probably the best job you could have in education. I was a math coordinator, so I didn't have my own classroom of kids. I had a flexible schedule. I was working out of an office space, no parent conferences, no lesson plans.
Wow.
And it was really, again, it's like the dream teaching job. But I found myself spending all of my time at work thinking about the next photo shoot I had, or the next marketing idea I could come up with, or, the next styled shoot I could put together. And so when my thoughts were 90% photography and 10% teaching, I was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be.
Sure.
And it came time for that contract to be signed. And I remember getting it in my box, and I went to my office and I closed the door and I just broke down crying. And I was like, I don't think I can physically sign this, because as much as I know that I have this really great kind of safety net job, and it's technically easy, and I have summers off, and I've got holidays and all the nice perks that come with teaching, it's just not what I feel like my heart is telling me to do. And so I had a conversation with my husband, and he was like, as long as you can match what you're making now, then I trust you. And so there was no like definite, like, yes, go do this. And I just kind of took it as a yes, go do this. And I went to my principal's office and I bawled in her office. And I was like, I'm giving you my resignation now. And she was so nice and was like, if you ever need to come back, you just let me know. No matter where you are, where I am, give me a call. I didn't tell my husband for about a week because I was really nervous. And I was finally like, okay, so remember that conversation we had about me quitting my teaching job? I was like, well, I kind of already did it. So it was definitely one of those things where I just felt like I was being pushed. And in every other step along in my journey and in my life story, it feels like it's always been, I've waited until something has forced me to make that decision.
Okay.
And this time I felt like I don't want to wait for something to force me to make this decision. I want to be the one in control of this decision. And so whether it's been where I had to leave a job for, relocation purposes, or whether it's because I had to leave a job because it wasn't a good fit, I wasn't happy there, this was something totally different. And it definitely was the idea too that I had this safety net job. So I didn't feel like I was really pushing myself in my business. And I think taking that away, I was like, okay, now I'm going to have to really like put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to have to like hit the pavement and get running with this if I want to make it what I envision it being. And so it was super scary, but at the same time, it was really exciting to have that motivation to just take off and run with it.
I love that. And that makes perfect sense. I've been meaning to ask, where in the world are you?
I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I'm in Texas. Okay. Yeah. So I live in a little town outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned kind of a history of being pushed to make any bolder move that you've had to make. I'm wondering what the scariest moment in your experience has been that you're willing to share.
Well, there's a lot. I would definitely say the scariest was when I was working in a teaching position that I truly was miserable at. We had just had my first daughter. Looking back, I think I was going through some postpartum depression, not realizing at the time. We were in the process of moving. There was a lot going on, and the job I was in was not a good fit for me. And I went to work every day miserable. And again, the same time of year came around, it was like, here's your contract for next year. And I was like, I guess I'll stick this out, because what else am I going to do? Like, I don't want to have to go search for their job. I don't want to have to like go and apply to all these other schools and not know what's going to happen. And when you go in your first 3 years of switching schools, so like anytime you're new, even though if you've taught for 30 years, anytime you start a new school, you're technically on like a probationary period.
Okay.
And they can pretty much say like, we don't want you to come back for any reason. And that year, the principal and I had really butted heads because she didn't like the way that I ran my classroom. I wasn't doing things exactly the same way as the other teachers were doing. And I was ready to stay there just because it was the easier choice, even though I was unhappy.
It was the devil you knew. Yeah.
Yeah. And she called me in her office one day and she basically was like, I can tell that you're not happy here. I can tell this is not a good fit for you. I'm not going to renew your contract. She goes, if you want to apply for schools, other schools in our district, that's fine. But I don't think this is a good fit for us. And where normally I would have been like, no, it's fine. Like I can stay.
Yeah.
I had this moment of just like relief. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's do, that's good. That's a good call. Like we'll leave it at that. She gave me a letter of recommendation and said, here, go apply. And then that's when I got the job as the curriculum person in the other district that ended up being the best teaching job I'd had up to that point. So it was definitely a scary moment because I knew I was going into another year, putting myself in a position to be unhappy, but I wasn't ready to make that decision myself yet.
Right.
Like I did several years later. And so I think that was a big turning point for me because it led me to the path that put me to where I am now. I think had I not been forced to make that decision, I could possibly still be in that same classroom today and still be just as miserable as I was that day.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a blessing in disguise. And I think that teachers, like, as many drawbacks there are to the profession, and of course rewards as well, but I think one thing that sets it apart from other jobs is because there is a school year and that, or like a season, you have more time to reflect, evaluate, and potentially make changes once that summer break hits. So it's cool that there's that. But it seems like in this particular circumstance that you're talking about at that school, you didn't even necessarily have that time to take advantage of it. You were making that decision on the fly, right? Because you said you were standing there and kind of, so I'm curious, in that moment, you were, of course, I'm sure, scared. What helped you push through and follow your heart and that sense of relief that you felt and say, okay, thank you, and start looking for something else versus your knee-jerk reaction that you mentioned of being like, oh, no, it's cool. I'm fine. I'm happy. Like, I'll stay.
It's one of those weird moments where I don't know that I can fully explain what happened because it's going to sound crazy, but it was almost one of those moments where you don't feel like that it's you speaking because I know how like I would have reacted in that situation, which was the get defensive, make it okay. But for some reason, just like, I don't know, there was just this calming sense, and I don't know, it depends on different people believe, and I believe in a higher power. And I think that at that moment, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, okay, this isn't, I'm pushing you to this point because this is not where you're supposed to be. And so it was sort of this out of body experience, which I feel weird saying, but it was kind of that feeling of like, this is not me saying these words, because when I left that office, it was almost like I was watching myself through the whole process. And so I don't know if it was like a subconscious kind of moment where I just came in and said, okay, that's great. Thank you so much for, this year, and moved on. And it was just one of those feelings of like something else was controlling me as opposed to the instinct side of me that would have normally tried to make it right.
Right. I love that. Well, I'm glad that you stuck through it because it seems like you're really happy with what you're doing now. And I know that I mentioned
very much.
I love it. I know I mentioned that one of the things you're doing in addition to photography is that you have your own podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then anything else that you're doing with your self-employment freedom?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I left my teaching career, I remember being a little bit sad in the fact that I'd gone through a, master's or a bachelor's degree and a master's degree program in teaching. And I was like, I've just wasted 2 degrees and lots of money and lots of time, and I'm doing nothing with it. And I had started, before I ever even quit my teaching career, I started a Facebook group, like a local group for other female photographers. And it was mostly a way for me just to connect with people who got it, who I could have those conversations with, and they weren't going to get tired of me talking about, lenses and photo shoots. Whereas my poor husband's like, okay, that's great. Let's talk about something else now. And so over the years, that group had really grown into this larger network, and we were doing all kinds of really exciting things as a group. And I had become unintentionally sort of a role model within the group as someone who had started this group and was kind of leading these other photographers. And I started getting people asking me questions about what I was doing in my business, because they were starting to see kind of the uptick in my business and my marketing and the brand I was creating in the community. And then when I quit my job, I had a ton of people asking me like, well, how did you do it? What were you doing? And how have you made it work since then? And so I found myself in this teaching role again, but teaching other business owners, other photographers. And it wasn't even just photographers. I had some friends who were opening little online boutiques, or people who had a local business that they were thinking about starting, or one of my friends was starting like a little home party business. And they would come to me and ask me questions about, well, how did you do this? And how did you start this? And so that allowed me to sort of still have that teaching experience, just in a different platform. And so when I quit my teaching job and went full time, I was really listening to a ton of podcasts because now I had more time during the day.
Yeah.
And I would go to the gym in the morning, mostly because my daughter had childcare there. So I'd drop my oldest one up at school. We'd go to the gym and I'd get an hour and a half of just me time for the day. And I would listen to these podcasts and I loved it. I loved the idea of this free education where people were just sharing what they were learning, sharing different ideas they had, sharing stories of other people. And I remember having this moment of like, I would like to do that. That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
And so about 6 months ago, I was like, you know what? I've been saying I want to do a podcast for a while. If I don't just do it, it's never going to happen.
Right.
And I have the mentality of like done is better than perfect.
Yes.
So I just sat down. I started mapping out kind of the name and the idea behind it, and the fact that I wanted it to be sort of like the Jenna Kutcher or the Amy Porterfield, Rachel Hollis sort of feel, where it's just teaching women specifically how to run a business, how to balance life and a business. And I know a lot of the people who listen are moms.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation around, how do you balance being home with 2 little kids and still run a business? And so today was our 10th episode, so it's brand new pretty much, but
Congratulations.
It's been really exciting. Thank you. I've had a ton of support from it. I've had some really amazing women that I've interviewed and talked to, and I've done a couple just with me sharing information and telling my story and sort of how my business has grown. And it's really fun. It's more fun than I thought it would be to like sit in my closet and talk to the wall for an hour a week. But it's really fun. I love it.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, with the Facebook group that you have and that mentoring that you're doing, and then I don't know what in the past 10 episodes has come up in your podcast, but surely you've encountered other people who've had those scary moments and maybe didn't feel divinely, directed to say something or do something. What sort of advice would you give somebody who's maybe contemplating quitting their job or any other scary, bold move to work with that fear and make things happen still?
Well, I would say, first of all, if the idea is in your mind, if you've thought about making a leap in some way, whether it's quitting your job or moving, my best friend, they just decided to up and move out of state recently. Yeah. And we've had a lot of conversations with her around this idea. And I was like, I think if it's been placed on your mind or on your heart to do something, it's there for a reason.
Sure.
And again, when I quit my teaching job, I didn't have all my ducks in a row per se.
Yeah.
So I needed that kind of push to make myself do things. Mm-hmm. So I think you need to sit down and really figure out, okay, am I the type of person that I need to have certain things lined up before I do this? Or should I just jump in and do it and kind of sink or swim? And you have to know your personality. You have to know what you're willing, to, I guess, take on. Mm-hmm. And then I think too, my other advice would be just to listen to your gut, because I think we talk ourselves out of things a lot when our gut is telling us, no, this is the right thing. Mm-hmm. And if you were to go back and look at how many times you went the other direction of what your gut was telling you, I would say most of them probably have not worked out the way you may have wanted them to. So I would say you just need to follow your gut and, figure out what works for you as far as taking that leap, whether it's small steps to get there or if it's one giant jump of just like jump in the deep end,
I love that. Well, you mentioned the podcast, and so I want you to plug it and tell us what it's called. And then anywhere else that you're online, if people if they're in the Texas area or willing to fly you somewhere, how they can get in touch with you for the photography, but then as well the business mentoring and such, which of course I'll put it all in the show notes so that it's easily accessible. But if someone's driving or running and wants to just remember it to look up later, I'd love to hear where to find you online.
Yeah. So the photography business is Paisley Lane Photography, and it's Instagram and Facebook are both Paisley Lane Photography. And then same thing with the website. And then the podcast is called Girl Means Business, and Instagram and Facebook are the same, Girl Means Business. And then you can also go to girlmeansbusiness.com, and I have all the show notes and links to different affiliates and things there they can go check out. And I've interviewed, I think I do half and half pretty much. So half my shows have been interviews and half have just been me sharing information. So
Cool.
there's about 5 or 6 really awesome interviews on there. They can go check out some of the women that have been on the show as well.
Awesome. And you and I met because of a mutual connection, Michelle,
Yeah.
who's been on my podcast and has sent me a couple people my way. And she mentioned you might be interested in an exchange. So
Yes.
if you'd ever like me to be a guest, we can flip the switch and switch roles.
I would absolutely love that. Yes, Michelle's going to be on in a couple of weeks on my show. And so, yeah, I loved her and I would love to interview. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be so fun. We'll definitely have to set that up. And
Yeah.
thanks for sending those links. I know you said that once you first quit your job and had more free time that you listened to a lot of podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that you probably read too. So if you have any book recommendations you'd like to share, I'd love to hear what you've got.
Yeah, so I do. I love to read, and I don't do it as much now as I did before I had kids, but any chance
Sure.
I get,
I hear that a lot.
yeah. But yeah, so one of my favorites that I've read recently is called Building a Story Brand. It's
Okay.
with Donald Miller, and it was really, really good because it was all about how stories impact our lives. And one of the things that he says in there, I think it's either there, he has a podcast as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we talk about is how our brain is constantly thinking of the next thing. So like when you're talking to somebody or you're listening to somebody give you information, you're thinking in your brain's firing off all these little cues of like, what am I going to say next? And don't forget this and don't forget that. And the only time our brains don't do that is when we're listening to a story. So it was really interesting to hear about like how stories impact and how they can affect people and business wise, how it can be really beneficial to your business.
Yeah.
I loved, it was really, I love anything that's sort of psychology and science based around why people do what they do and why things happen. So it was really interesting to read about that. Another one I love is Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. I just think if you're wanting inspiration and just something that gets you fired up about life and business and anything that's going on in your little world, it's a really, really good one to read. So those are two of my favorites.
Love that. Thank you for those. I haven't heard of the first one, and the second one's been recommended a lot of times, but I have not. It's on the very long list of things to read that I have.
Yeah, I have about 6 on my nightstand right now that I'm like, I'll get to those this summer, hopefully.
I love it. I'm curious. So it seems like you kind of stepped away from teaching and teaching found you again, which is another thing that kind of resonates with me as well. And so I ask every guest this, and I think I have an idea of what you'll say, and maybe I'll be wrong, but I'm wondering if you know your purpose, and if so, if you don't mind sharing it. And I know that that's a big question and sometimes freaks people out and can even paralyze people. But I also know that others are like, no, it's dynamic, or I have this really loose definition. So I always love hearing people's answer. So I'd love to hear your response to that one.
So I think that I haven't realized this until the last probably year or two. I think I kind of needed time to sort of figure out my path.
Yeah.
But I ultimately think my purpose is to impact women and help women either find their passion or find their worth, because even in my photography, I photograph mostly women, whether it's brides or moms. I do a lot of boudoir sessions. So I have a ton of moms that come in and do boudoir sessions. I do high school senior girls is another big part of what I do.
Yeah.
And then on the education side of the podcast and what I do mentoring wise, it's all working with female entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And so my passion really lies in women and just the power that women have, and then helping women sort of find what makes them beautiful, whether that's personally, professionally, helping them find their path and where they want to go in their business or in their life. It's amazing the conversations you can have with someone who is sitting in a makeup chair getting ready for a photo shoot where they're going to be in lingerie.
I've been on both sides of that chair.
Yeah, there's something about that chair that people kind of open up and you start to have real conversations with women. And it's just, that's what gets me fired up. You know, there's days where I am exhausted and I don't want to do another photo shoot, or I don't want to do another phone call or anything like that. And then I get on the phone with a lady, or I go into the studio and she sits in that chair and we have an hour-long conversation. and I walk away and I'm like, okay, I'm like pumped up. This is why I do this. So
Yeah.
I really believe my purpose is to impact women in any form or fashion that I can.
I love that. It's been so interesting lately. I've had like a few in a row that have been very like women specific. So
Uh-huh.
I know your podcast is called or starts with girl, so that makes
Right.
it, pretty obvious that that's your target. Mine is unisex, but I've had a string of people in the row who are like, I work with women. And I'm always like, why women? So you answered that already pretty much in your explanation, but
Yeah. And nothing against men. Men are great too. But I find that I think women need a little more of that community and a little more of that support. And I just think that's pretty amazing. And what's interesting is I've actually had some men that have listened to the podcast, mostly just because they're friends of mine that support me. And I had one tell me one time that he had listened to it and he was like, you've just inspired me to really like slow down in my business and in my career and spend time with my family. And I've watched you, quit your full-time job to do what you're doing and follow your passion. He goes, it's just so inspiring. And so even though I think that I'm focusing on women, it does kind of have the same elements that you could be talking to anybody. It doesn't have to be women, but
sure.
yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, I think you've given so many great recommendations, whether it's the book recommendations or just things that have come up naturally in conversation. But I always like to ask people if there's any other advice, like lessons you've learned recently or things that you wish you would have learned a long time ago, or just anything that's on your heart to share with the audience. I'd love to give you the opportunity to send any message you have.
Yeah, thank you. So, oh my gosh, I feel like I could say so many. I think my biggest thing, and I mentioned this sort of earlier, in the fact that I fully believe in done is better than perfect. And I think I know a lot of people out there that I've talked to that they get almost paralyzed in the fear of something not being perfect.
Right.
And I just always say, like, you know what? Go find the person you admire the most and scroll back through their Instagram feed or their Facebook photos or go back to their very first podcast, and you'll see that they didn't start off perfect. It's gotten, and perfect doesn't really exist, but that's a whole different topic. But I think that you just, you kind of have to start somewhere, and then it goes from there, and it changes, just like you talked about, your kind of career journey and where it's come to now. And there's all these twists and turns, and it's never what you really think it's going to be. And that's part of the fun of it, is just kind of jumping in and going along for the ride. So don't be afraid to do that.
I love that. I think that's great advice. And I think that that's something that has definitely held me back before, is being a bit of a perfectionist. And now I wouldn't say it's tied to fear, although maybe it is, but it's just that I'm so accustomed to, like, I'm not releasing anything until it's perfect. So that's definitely slowed me down. So I'm sure that that's going to resonate with a lot of people who are listening.
Well, and it's hard now with social media, is everyone feels like they have to put up this really pretty, perfect image of their life or their job or their business or whatever it is. And it's intimidating to put things out there that don't portray the perfectness or the prettiness. Yeah. And so I think that's what's scary for some people, is they're afraid of being judged or taken the wrong way. And, it's taken me a long time to get to this point and a lot of work, but I'm finally at a place where I'm like, you know what, if I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. I'm somebody else's, and it doesn't have to be 100%. I'm just going to put it out there, and this is me, and I'm okay with that.
I think that's fantastic. I have my final question, and I think you segued to it perfectly, because you kind of talked about your journey and how you put in work to get where you are and how that's paid off. I love to ask people, if 8-year-old Kendra had a crystal ball and could see where you are now and all of the things that you've done to get here, and then you probably have an idea of maybe summer vacations or the foreseeable future, different plans and such. On a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little Kendra be to see where you are today?
Oh my gosh. Probably a 10 or 11. Like, I think that, I look back a lot of times because it's easy to get caught up in what you want to do or what you haven't accomplished yet.
Yeah.
And I really, this past year, have been trying to focus on just the accomplishments and the fact, like little things, like I had some of my wedding photos published in a magazine this past year. And I'm like, to actually see my photos in print in a magazine, like that's huge. And I would not take the time to celebrate that. I'd be like, okay, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm really trying to slow down and look at like how far I've come and everything I've accomplished. And yes, there's still more to do and there's still more work to put in. But yeah, I think that little version of me would be like, you go, girl. Like, who knew you could do this?
I love that. I think that's great. So keep celebrating. I think it's important, especially for type A, perfectionist, driven type people, that it's so easy to move on to the next goal. But if you, and not realize what you've done, but to take the time to reflect and then of course celebrate, I think is really important. So I'm glad that you shared that too.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so fabulous talking to you. I feel like we're kindred spirits. I love it. And I look forward to swapping roles and getting on your show at some point. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom and insight with me and our audience today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. We have so much in common. That was so much fun. I adore meeting people and hearing their journeys, and I hope that you are fulfilled by hearing them as well. Like I've said many times before, my goal with this podcast is that people will hear the stories of others and their bold moves and recognize pieces of themselves in the qualities of the people I'm interviewing and think, well, if that person can do this, then I can too. So whatever it is you're thinking about doing, I hope you recognize qualities in these brave people that I get to chat with and that it inspires you to do that. My goal is to inspire as many people as I possibly can, and the best way you can help me is, first of all, by doing whatever the thing is. But second of all, if you feel like it would be helpful to someone, if you could share these podcasts, I would really appreciate that, whether that is on your social media profiles or directly to specific friends that you think of when you hear these stories. I would really love it if you did that. Another thing you can do to help me is to subscribe. That way you won't miss an episode. It'll be automatically downloaded, or you'll get an alert whenever there's a new one on Mondays and Fridays. And you won't miss, for example, Kendra's challenge that's coming out this Friday, because it's going to be a good one and it's going to help you live a better life. Who doesn't want a better life? Please help me do that. And then finally, if you are already on Apple Podcasts, as it's now called, you may as well leave a review. I would, of course, prefer a 5-star review, because that would help the algorithm of Apple Podcasts to tell other people that this is worth listening to because people are liking it. However, I would be goofy if I wasn't willing to take constructive criticism and advice. So if you have that, send that over as well and leave the honest review that you'd like. Otherwise, if you do have feedback and advice, you are welcome to share that with me on social media as well. I'm at Mandy Bryce everywhere there is to be, I'm pretty sure. And I would love to hear from you. All right, so stay tuned for Friday for Kendra's challenge. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. As always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.